Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the GepRC T-Cube18. Not much of a cube shape, so I don't know where that name came from. This does come in kind of three different versions. There's the HD version, which has HD0 inside of it. I don't know why we don't see Walksnail as an option for the HD version. It also comes in analog in 1S and analog in 2S, but the analog for 2S says pre-order on the GepRC website, which this was sent by GepRC for review, and there will be a link down in the video description to those different versions of the T-Cube18. The flight controller down in there is the Taker F411, which does have a 12 amp ESC, and it is also 1 and 2S compatible with the USB port right there on the bottom, which is pretty much flush with the screw head, so that's risky. We also have the HD0 VTX right up there, and then we have the Eco camera. I do wish it was deluxe, but it comes with the Eco. Motors are the SpeedX 1002, 18,000 kV. Does that say 18,000 kV? I can barely read that. I need my magnifiers. And the props on those are Gemfan 45mm tri-bladed props. We have a T antenna right here in this 3D print, that does come directly off of the flight controller. Battery connection is an XT30. Adjustable camera angle with those screws on the side of that camera. Texturized rubber battery mat, and of course they send along rubber bands, which you can use a small battery strap, but I stuck stock with these rubber bands. Our video antenna is also held with the 3D print, which does have slots for 2 antennas, but of course, we only need 1. And something that's very uncommon is a beeper right there underneath that 3D printer, held by that 3D print. We don't see that much anymore. You also get an extra set of props in blue. As I mentioned, we get some extra rubber bands. We get a prop remover, which we don't really need in this case, a small screwdriver, and a hex driver for all these different hex screws. We also get a support card, social media card, a front and back one-pager on the Taker F411. This side covers the receiver and buzzer and camera, and the back side covers the same, but in another language. And last but not least, we get a full sheet of stickers. There's 11 individual stickers on here. Bottom cover fiber plate looks to be 1.5 millimeters, and of course, it's all one piece. Top plate is also 1.5 millimeters. And motor post, I'm getting about 86 millimeters. It weighs about 43.5 grams. I tried it on all these different batteries in both a slow cruisy flight and then a more aggressive flight, but this battery on only the slow cruisy exploratory flight. With the Nanotech 300 milliamp 2S battery, we get 61.78 grams. With the G&B 350 milliamp battery, we get 63.77 grams. With the G&B 380, which is the recommended battery, but not one I recommend, it comes in at 66.41 grams. With the G&B 550 2S battery, it weighs 72.18 grams, and that is the battery we'll see in the faster flight. With the Tattoo R-Line 550 2S battery, it weighs 74.93 grams. And with the Tattoo 850 milliamp battery, it weighs 83.4 grams. Okay, this is the primary flight that we're going to see. I'll show you kind of picture-in-picture sort of cruisy, sort of exploratory flights where I did some flight time testing. I continue to do that, but this time of year, I'm not going to probably be able to do that as frequently. And you notice on that punch out, we see that zero throttle wobble. So when I get to the top and then I nose over, how it kind of wobbles. Now there is wind, but I flew this, of course, many different days. Thankfully, the weather that I had with the snow went away fairly quickly. And I found across batteries, even the lightest battery, the recommended battery, that would happen. This is the G&B 550, the red labeled one that I am flying. For me, that was kind of my preferred battery due to weight, thrust available, handling, stuff like that. And across all the different batteries, I had those zero throttle sort of wobbles. And I think that alludes to, you know, we need some PID tuning increase, betterment. I'm not sure what sort of term you might want to use, but it seems to fly fine except for in very specific circumstances, and I'm not sure PID tune purely will take care of everything. But also at the very end of the flight, when I come in for the landing, notice the prop wash handling there is not very good. So we'll see that coming up. But I wanted to draw that out, that you need to pay attention to the handling of this. When you're doing straight line sort of stuff, you know, exploratory sort of flight, even more aggressively, it handles just fine. All the way up to that Tattoo 850. And speaking of the Tattoo 850 in exploratory flight, I got 9 minutes and 15 seconds, a few times over that, a few times under that. With the 550 Tattoo, I got 4 minutes and 21 seconds. With the 550 550 G&B battery, I got about 15 to 20 seconds less than that, so about 4 minutes flat. With the 380s even cruising around and manipulating your low voltage warning, minute 45, and that is a recommended battery, and that's why I said what I said during the battery introduction section. On the Nanotech 2S battery, please, if you get those batteries for any reason, be sure you get the specific ones that I showed. They are the 45 to 90C. C rating doesn't mean anything, but it's what they put on the label, and it does come with the red JST, so you have to put an XT30 on it. But with that battery in a slow, cruisy sort of flight, I got 3 minutes and 40 seconds. I did more aggressive flying with that battery, well, with all the batteries as well, but especially those smaller batteries, which I was really hopeful that they would handle the load. And it just, you're going to get short flights, and you're going to be bothered by the constant buzzing and on-screen warning for low battery voltage. That's why I'm flying the 550, because I just knew that, well, I would get annoyed by it, so wouldn't most others? And you risk flying much too low, because once you get below 3.3 volts per cell, oftentimes batteries just really fall off the cliff, so you got to hustle home and land, so you can't be outranging around. So when it comes to this particular quad, my recommendation is, one, GepRC should work on the PID tune a little bit. But if you're wanting to buy it right away, right now, then it's probably going to be something that you might want to be more of a explorer in your flight path. I didn't have any problems with durability, by the way, and I have some crashes that I'll show you. One, I just flat out ran it right into one of those 3 trees lined up in that section of the yard. It was ridiculous. I was blinded by the sun and just squared up a tree. But so the 1.5 millimeter carbon fiber doesn't worry me too much, but of course if you're flying in a space with a lot of concrete or really hard structures, that could be different. But in my crashes, it held up just fine. But going back to, I would like to see a little bit of a PID tune change, and here we come in for that landing, and we have that prop wash. But I'm worried that the motors are just too demanding on this prop size. But the flight ended. We got 3 minutes and 51 seconds. I did manipulate my low voltage warning, and we see the battery coming back up above 3.5 volts per cell. And this is just my exploratory flight with the 850. I wanted to show you that just as proof of concept that it does just fine. Actually, when I did my flat battery testing, the weather was actually better. Flat flight, not flat battery, excuse me. But so then shortly after I got kind of completed with running through the different batteries that I already showed you, then I had the snow that hit, for those of you that saw that posting. The snow hung around for about 2 or 3 days, but I did fly on the 3rd day when we had a little bit of snow. And the snow hung around a little bit longer in the front yard, where this time of year it's largely in the shade. So I've been able to still fly. We have had some relatively high winds. I think I may have mentioned it, but in that flight, the winds were upwards of 29 miles per hour on the gust, but pretty steady in the upper teens, and it was 54 degrees, so it was pretty reasonable outside. But there was winds, and this is a lightweight quad. But again, I flew it on days where the winds were calmer, doing a more aggressive flight battery testing on like the 380s, the 350s, and the 300s, and I still found across all the different batteries that the PID tune didn't seem to change much regardless of battery or battery weight. So that's where I tend to push towards. We need some PID tune improvement from GepRC on this, but I am concerned that they might be at the limits of what can be tuned out. I do think the zero throttle can be tuned out, but as far as the additional prop wash handling, I'm not so sure about that. And I don't think in this particular case the PID tune is going to give us better efficiency, so we can fly for 2 minutes at least on the recommended battery of the 380 or even the 350s. Before we jump into the quad, I do want to show you an up-close picture of this battery. I've been using these batteries for a while. You can buy these from Hobby King and various other websites, but they have a lot of batteries that look like this, and they have a lot of batteries that have different label printed C ratings, and I'm always careful to say label printed because C ratings are only comparable when you're using the same brand, because when you change brand, the C rating does not mean anything. And again, it does not come with the XT30. If you buy a Nanotech battery and it comes with an XT30, it is not this battery, and the ones that I have tested in this size from Nanotech do not perform like this does. And if you look at this, this is a pretty flat battery. And I'm wondering if this particular manufacturer is using that same sort of 1S flat battery tech that we've seen across our 1S batteries from Tiny Whoop, Weebly, Tattoo, Beta FPV now with their Lava series. Aerial Outlaws is another one that makes those good flat 1S batteries. But so I just wanted to hit this here for a moment in case you do have something that's 2S and you want to try a smaller battery, to make sure you're getting what I feel is the only battery that Nanotech or Turnigy makes that you should bother using as far as the 300 milliamp 2S batteries. I don't have a lot to talk about when it comes to the construction. It's pretty typical, especially when it comes to GepRC. We have this metal up front, which when it comes to the metal, it's kind of an evil necessary in some designs, but I do think if we can work in carbon fiber, that is going to be lighter, but this adds a little flair in the edging with the silver and black. You can see down here with the screw that we can slide the camera forward and back if we want to add some camera protection, because as you can see right here, at my particular camera angle and where I have it, the camera isn't really protected out here very much at all. I mentioned it earlier, we can use a battery strap on this, so if you want to secure your batteries better. I'm not really a huge fan of how this comes up here. I would have preferred the quad just be a touch longer and it come out of the carbon fiber, because, you know, if one of these wires, if we don't pay attention when we're plugging in, our battery wires could get out there on the prop line and nick it up at the very least, and at the worst tear it right through, and then you fall out of the sky because of that. And you see here that one of the ways I made sure my wires wouldn't is I'd twist them, and then I would twist my battery connector wire the same way, or is it the different way? I forget. Basically, I want them twisting against each other so they don't go anywhere, and so I maintain this twist in the back so that both of these wires are kind of hugging the tail in, and then I put my battery in this way to where the head of the battery, where the connector is here, and then I twist that the opposite way, and then I plug it in here. And then I use the twist to take out any slack, or as much slack as I can, and still get it plugged in the way I want. That's one way of getting around that. Now, again, we do have the battery connector going directly to the flight controller and the wires out here. So if you have a battery ejection, it should disconnect if we have a nice solder joint here. But to add ourselves some protection, you could pinch these underneath the carbon fiber top plate and then run a zip tie underneath there and kind of pinch them together. That's going to give you kind of a double layered resistance where the wires are against the carbon fiber as well as the zip tie. So if you do have a battery ejection and it pulls, it's pulling here rather than directly off the solder pads of your ESC, because those things are always expensive. And, you know, if you can protect that, you know, this is going to generally, once it gets enough force, just separate between our two XT30 connections. Generally speaking, sometimes we have tighter battery connections than, you know, from one battery to the next, or one quad end to another. And if you are running the rubber bands in this sort of configuration, I would recommend highly doing something back here. Now, what is unique about this is, well, one, we have HD0, but we don't have walk snail. And I just had a video where I was talking about the lack of walk snail in the video arena. But it has a buzzer, and you can see the buzzer. Maybe I should have shown that in the specs. We got that little hole down there. I think they're technically, aren't they called piezo buzzers or something like that? But it's a buzzer, and it's pretty loud, and you got to hear it when the battery warning would kick on. And then you could also program your remote. By program, I mean you set a switch to a mode, and you can activate the buzzer. So if you go down in grass or something like that, that you get in the general area, and then you can hit the buzzer, and then it, as long as your radio is still connected, and then the buzzer will sound and help clue you into where it is. I did mention that I had some crashes, and I'll put a few of them up here, but I want to start with that one that I hit right directly into the tree where the sun just blinded me. I did mention earlier that I wish this had the Lux camera, because I really like the Lux camera. I like the flexibility in us being able to tweak out the camera settings as well as just the image quality. And I've, of course, got one of the Lux cameras on a Whoop. Actually got a Whoop coming up that will also have the Lux camera, but that might be a few days or a week, so I just started flying that the other day. But as far as the T-Cube goes, one of my last concerns is I've always kind of hesitated or hedged when it comes to these 1000 series motors and where they fit in our quad market. And, you know, this is getting close to 2-inch prop size. Can you run 2-inch props on it? No. I tried separately. Props, you can't put 2-inch props on here. 2-inch props, larger props are going to be more efficient, generally speaking. But these 1000 series motors, I have just never thought they had a really good mix or match for quads. You can make them run good, but when it comes to the weight of these versus something like an 1102, which I've used a lot of different 1102s over the years, and a 2-inch prop, you just get so much more efficiency and thrust. So I think making a T-Cube 2-incher is a really good idea for GepRC. GepRC, you know, really hone in on that zero throttle and prop wash tuning. You might be black boxing, but it's not getting quite tight enough on those things. I've seen the zero throttle issue on several different GepRC quads. I think GepRC could improve that. Throttle linearization is one way that I did it on the Sinbot or Sinlog 30. That was a long time ago, so I might be misquoting which video I did that on. But I'd like to see this in a 2-inch format. I think that would be a better fit. I think we would get longer flight times. Off the same batteries, I think we could get longer flight times. Like on my rocket race, which was analog, I could get 3 minutes on this little tiny battery. So if you go up here, then you're going to be getting, what, 4.5 to 5.5 minutes maybe? So I think that's a really good mix. If we go 1102, we take out the arms a little bit. I would like to see the bottom plate also be 2 millimeters on a 2-inch version instead of 1.5. And, you know, use the same components. Otherwise, I think it will work just fine. We might want to do something different with the top plate so that we have a little more of a constraint on where the battery wires can go, and even including the buzzer. I like that idea as well. Oh, look at that. I think I just noticed something. I don't know if you can see that, but it looks like my antenna, I may have had some prop strikes with this antenna. If I can get it to focus, see the end there? It's kind of got some silver hanging out, so I must have had some prop strikes over there. I don't see it this side. That's something else I wasn't even aware of. Maybe this is flexing in flight and getting up into the prop line. We might need to move this down. Oh, that reminds me. Something else that we need to do is we need to do something different with the USB port, like have a flight controller where the USB port actually comes off the traditional side. Maybe they don't have a version of that, but this one with it essentially level with the screws right here. I know the camera's not focusing very well, but that concerns me that as we come into land, we're going to be nicking that up and then potentially breaking that USB port right off, which can be repaired sometimes, but that is a tedious repair, and I think that's kind of unnecessary, especially if we just raise the stack a couple of millimeters to put this connection kind of inside the carbon, and then we can ride on the screws. You know, we can replace screws very easy. USB ports, we cannot. So my advisement for this one is that if you're looking at it, I've already kind of pointed out my critiques and things that I would like to see. I don't want to be hitting everyone over the head with that. I'd like to see a 2-inch version. I will say that. I think 2-inch is, in my opinion, 2-inch is so much better than 45 millimeter when it comes to open prop specifically. For 1S inside, 45 millimeter can bring you some extra efficiency for longer flight times, better training, not better training, but more training, and larger props are inherently just a little bit more stable. But I think we can really gain some efficiency in going 2-inch props and 1102 or 1103 motors. 1102 are about the same weight as the 1000 series motors. But I think this one, if you're getting it, you should probably be looking at it primarily as something that is just a kind of exploratory flight, like we talked about. When it comes to the longer, sort of more aggressive flights, we have some PID tuning, and you can take that on as well. Maybe GepRC will come out with a new PID tune for this, and that will improve a couple of things that I am pointed out. But one of the things that concerns me with that 1.5 millimeter carbon and running bigger batteries like I did, even though I didn't have a problem, but if you hit it, you crash on the road, and you have a heavier battery like the 550s from G&B or Tattoo, which give you reasonable flight time. We would be better served if we could drop down to the smaller size batteries, and especially with this 1.5 millimeter carbon fiber. So I pointed out my critiques. I hope they were very clear and possibly helpful. Redesigning or coming out with a new version for GepRC. I'm very biased about the 2-inch 2S versions. One of my favorite sizes, especially for flying out in my space. Now, if you don't have a space like mine, or your space is much, much bigger or much, much smaller, it might not be a good mix for you. But in this particular case, because we're so close to a 2-inch prop already, why not just make one that's 2-inch and then give everybody the opportunity to buying a 2-inch one? But I've gone on too long. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise about the GepRC T-Cube18 or 18, please let me know in the comments section below. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.